Thank you very much. I'm very delighted to be part of the panel today and the information today. I brought a short presentation and I'll try to be very brief. You have already heard, I think in order to teach something about the records, you need to understand the history of the archive. So here, the German case, as you already heard, Stasi Records Archive, it contains 40 years of documentation from the Ministry for State Security of East Germany, shortly known as the Stasi. It was active from 1950 through 1990. It was preserved and opened up by people's demand, very important, during the peaceful revolution of 1989 and the German unification process of 1990. Those are very decisive factors. And then it was accessed on the basis of the Stasi Records Act, which is still in effect with a few modifications until today, since early 1992. And it's organized in an agency, or it used to be organized in an agency called Federal Commissioner for the Stasi Records until 2021. There's a change. Since June of 2021, the Stasi Records Archive is now part of the Federal Archives in Germany, the Bundesarchiv. It has its headquarters in Berlin, but it also has 13 regional sites all over the former East Germany. It contains about 111 kilometers of records, plus thousands of audiovisual materials, photos, and a small contingent of electronic data. So it's a huge archive. It's particularly preserved because it was one ministry and there was not too much opportunity to destroy the records during the peaceful revolution. So since 1992, on the basis of the Stasi Records Act, we've had over 7.4 million requests for access. So that's a period of 30 years. Very important also in the teaching of the archive, its history, its opening, but also its uses now, because it has established a narrative over 30 years of practiced access. So there's individual access for research and media and for public and non-public purposes, among them vetting and rehabilitation. So this is an important photograph because this is the headquarters of the State Security Service, and this is where the archive is located, and this is where we do our education. So the archive itself and the historic side of the Stasi are two intrinsically linked ideas in how to tell this history with an emotional impact also to the next generation. So where formerly the Stasi marched and had their défilé with the minister, today there's an exhibition on the peaceful revolution. Where formerly the desk of the Minister for State Security was, today there are students understanding the history of the time, and where the records are stored, students understand the mechanics and the structure of the records. We have an exhibition called Access to Secrecy, explaining the archive in details. And there's a walk-in files, because to many young people today, writing something in documents and on paper is kind of unusual. Working with index cards is completely foreign. There's a whole new world that they have to discover, and we try to meet them where they work, and that means we have to have digital resources for education. So there's what we call a Stasi Mediatek that has over 2,000 records, audio and visual files as a curated window into the archive. But our public education department also offers digital resources, helping people understand how these records have to be interpreted. And to conclude, we're talking today about the legal and ethical implications for pedagogical use of secret police files. I would say the legal aspect is covered by the Stasi Records Act. It protects the privacy of those that were subjects of the documents. It makes transparent the government action. And there are specific purposes of rights to access. You can educate about methods, structures, and effects of the Stasi. And that's a new purpose since we united with the Federal Archive. We educate about the historic significance of the Stasi Records Archive. These are our guidelines in terms of the legal structure. And then the ethical implication is that the context and origin of the material has to be explained before you can understand and read them. It documents human rights violation in a specific historic period, and it documents the work of a secret police and intelligence body. So you need to deliver a lot of context to understand what is in these documents and to interpret them right. Also, 30 years after the end of the peaceful revolution, there's changing generations of young people coming. There's digital natives. There's more and more, especially in Germany, people with migration backgrounds who don't necessarily understand democracy in a certain way or find authoritarian ideas super objectionable. So that has to be taken into account. But also, there's family narratives over 30 years of discussing East and West, and there's national narratives, and then there's the world situation. So relaying the content of these documents has to constantly adapt to the changing forces. But our main focus in the educational department here for the Stasi Records Access is that we want to teach media literacy, very critical skill these days, questioning of sources, who wrote this down, with what intention, what do I read from it? But we also want to make sure that these history lessons are applicable today. Why are they important to me? What can I learn from this history? It's just not my grandfather or father's history. It's a history that relates to me today. That is what we try to put into our sources. And of course, it also teaches them to respect human rights and the rule of law. The rule of law in terms of there's a legal base for accessing these records, but also in studying the records, you can see the systematic undermining of human rights and the rule of law, and that's a teaching tool as well. So that's it for my part.